This is East Asia Tonight.
Good evening, I'm Otelia Edwards. Tonight's top stories from East Asia and beyond. Singapore Prime Minister Lawrence Wong has unveiled his new cabinet, balancing fresh faces with experienced hands. The changes include new appointments, promotions, and a renamed Energy, Trade and Industry Ministry. A possible Trump-Xi summit, fragile trade ties and the potential for cooperation. The focus of talks between top US and Chinese diplomats on the sidelines of the ASEAN gathering in the Philippines. Also, Japan reportedly seeking alternative shipping routes through safer waters. Local media say Tokyo will work with Southeast Asian partners to chart 5 strategic sea lanes. Also, more disruption to energy cargoes. 3 tankers carrying Saudi crude oil turn back, heeding a warning from Houthi rebels against transit in the Red Sea. And a profit surge for Cathay Pacific, Hong Kong's flagship carrier forecasting more than 70% growth in first half earnings on robust travel and cargo demand. Also tonight, a youth collective is dropping beads in unusual locations in Japan, hoping to bring new life to traditional businesses. Singapore has unveiled a new lineup of cabinet and political office holders. Prime Minister Lawrence Wong calls the changes balanced, blending a new generation of leaders anchored by an experienced core team. 6 office holders are promoted, while 3 new political office holders. Now, the previous cabinet reshuffle took place last May. Jeffrey Seow has been promoted to full minister for the transport portfolio. He will also be second minister for finance. Likewise, David Neo will become full minister for culture, community and youth. At the same time, he will be second minister for education. Sim Ann has moved up as well. She will become second minister for foreign affairs and home affairs. Jasmine Lau has been promoted to acting manpower minister and senior minister of state for digital development and information. Labour chief Ng Chee Meng takes on a new role as minister in the Prime Minister's office. Zaki Mohammed was earlier appointed acting minister in charge of Muslim affairs and will remain senior minister of state for defense. Meanwhile, Goh Pei Ming moves up the rank to be senior minister of state for home affairs and social and family development. Several backbenchers also become political office holders. Fu Zhexiang is now minister of state for trade and industry and manpower, while Sean Low also takes on new roles as minister of state for education and health. K. Shanmugam will be made senior minister. He keeps his roles as coordinating minister for national security and home affairs minister.
This balance matters because Singapore needs both experienced leaders to steer through immediate challenges and a new generation ready to take us forward. Leadership renewal is therefore a continuous process. We identify people with the ability, the commitment and the character to serve. We give them opportunities to develop and grow, to prove themselves, and to entrust them with greater responsibilities as they are ready. And that is how we build a strong team for Singapore, not just for today, but for the years ahead.
The country's Trade and Industry Ministry will also be renamed as the Energy, Trade and Industry Ministry. It will be jointly led by Deputy Prime Minister Gan Kim Yong and Minister Tan See Leng, who will relinquish his manpower portfolio.
We used to talk about the water challenge in Singapore as a national existential matter. Increasingly, energy going forward will be the national challenge for Singapore. Not energy per se, because we can have energy through fossil fuel, but clean energy is going to be a major challenge for us. How we can continue to power our needs while achieving net zero. And so we are pursuing this work with a lot of focus. The work scope is expanding greatly.
Fresh diplomatic engagement between the US and China at the ASEAN Foreign Ministers Meeting in Manila. Top diplomats Marco Rubio and Wang Yi have held talks amid concerns at the gathering over renewed Middle East hostilities and friction over disputed waters in the South China Sea. Right, joining us live now, our senior correspondent Leong Wai Kit at the ASEAN gathering in Metro Manila. We have as well Tan Si-hui for the perspective from Beijing. Well, first to you, Wai Kit. Tell us, what are the US and China hoping to get out of these talks between these two top diplomats?
Yeah, I'll tell you, fresh lines and updates have just come out from the US-China talks moments ago. The focus of the talks really come from China President's prepared trip to the US. There was also updates about how China and US recognize that there are differences between them, but it is their job to work them out. So in short, it appears that the tone is measured, which is in keeping with the tone that we've seen since the first Trump-Xi talks had concluded months ago. And to the region, this is good news because stable ties between these two powers would mean positive impact on the region as well. I want to also quickly talk about how ASEAN has benefited after having spoken to US and China at the ASEAN meetings earlier. Now, in terms of cooperation and practical cooperation, Washington has promised investments and support in areas like aviation infrastructure, energy supplies, and LNG development. With China, it's more concrete on the economic front. There's a lot of focus on the ASEAN-China Free Trade Agreement 3.0, which has moved on from reducing tariffs to jointly producing areas, developing areas such as digital and green economies.
And Si-hui, walk us through this. I mean, beyond the preparations for a possible visit by President Xi Jinping to the US in September, what are some of the other key outstanding issues in ties?
Well, what stood out to me and what's more apparent is what's not being said between Mr. Rubio and Mr. Wang Yi. According to what Mr. Rubio had just mentioned to reporters just after the talks was that the remarks on election interference, U.S. election interference by China, that was not being mentioned by both sides, according to Mr. Rubio. That had sparked a lot of condemnation by China back then when Mr. Trump had accused China of election interference. They had said that was groundless remarks and it is not on factual basis, and that China has no interest in interfering in the U.S. elections and never has. And so what we want to look out for is the official readout between the U.S. and China following the talks. If neither side mentioned the fact that China had really interfered into the U.S. election, it shows that neither side wants this topic to dominate the bilateral relationship that they currently have. And analysts also saying that this could be symbolic of the fact that both sides could not want something out of this and instead want to focus on what could happen in September when Mr. Xi visits Mr. Trump in the U.S. So this will unlikely derail that meeting in September. Mr. Rubio saying that after that meeting with Mr. Wang Yi, saying that there are differences between the U.S. and China, but that there are also potential areas of cooperation. And what we have seen, even after Mr. Trump had publicly accused China of interfering in the U.S. elections, we have seen that there are still high-level engagement between both sides. And I spoke with an analyst. This comes after a very successful meeting between Mr. Trump and Mr. Xi in Beijing in May. And he talked to me about what could be in the lead-up towards the September meeting between Mr. Trump and Mr. Xi.
A positive trajectory for US-PRC ties. So that is likely to continue. There could be some sort of arrangement on particular trade and maybe some tariff talks. But given the this current US administration's track record, whether those go anywhere is a matter of speculation.
Si-hui, so aside from Mr. Rubio, I believe Mr. Wang, he also met with his Philippine and Australian counterparts. What did Beijing have to say about these engagements?
Well, two issues were raised. Before I get on to what the other countries have mentioned, Mr. Rubio had said that recent incidents in the South China Sea dispute were escalatory, very negative, and benefits no one. And Australian Foreign Minister Penny Wong also called the recent altercation dangerous conduct. And this comes after 14 countries, including the Philippines, the US, and Australia, issued a joint statement reaffirming a 2016 International Tribunal ruling on the South China Sea. And so China has since stepped up efforts to reinforce its position. And so far, just earlier, the Foreign Affairs Ministry had responded by calling on other states not to interfere on the South China Sea issue.
明眼人都看得出，海上亦有风吹草动，不问青红皂白，就大张旗鼓跳出来反对中国的，始终就是那么一小撮国家。他们的目的究竟是维护南海和平稳定，还是唯恐南海不乱，早已不言自明。
Well, the second issue that was being mentioned by other states would be the recent missile tests by China in the Pacific. The Australian Foreign Minister regards these actions as destabilizing. Now, the Foreign Affairs Ministry also in the same press conference said and reiterated that this is routine military training activities of the Chinese armed forces and said that they had already given prior notice to Australia and other states when it came to its missile tests. And they also said that this was not directed to any specific country and is in accordance with international law. But already previously, Australia and New Zealand said that there was not enough lead-up time before the missile launch was issued. And also, Japan had said that this was done without transparency.
Right. Finally, one last question to Wai-Kit. I mean, we've talked a lot about the US, China, but in terms of other key highlights from today's gathering in Manila, can you tell us more?
Yeah, one key highlight, Oteli, is that the Philippines-China talks have concluded. Bear in mind, these talks were held amid ongoing tensions between both countries, and it's also the first time that there is an engagement at the foreign minister level in 2 years. Now, at this point, I want to trouble my studio and producer colleagues to call up a social media post put up by Secretary Lazaro on X. Now, she had chosen certain photographs to depict her and Mr. Wang Yi at the bilateral talks, and her words are also carefully crafted. Now, what stands out to me is how she described the South China Sea. She used the words not appropriate, right? I'm sorry, not acceptable. Now, in the past 2 days, we've heard stronger and more specific language, including hostile, provocative, and aggressive actions by China. Ms. Lazaro also pointed out the China Daily video, in which that video depicted Filipinos as monkeys. Now, she described the video as disturbing, but we've heard stronger descriptions, including demeaning, dehumanizing, and racist. Now, it's very important to note that this is not Philippines backing down on its position, and let's say that this is simply choosing the right tone at the right time. And this gives you a sense of the subtle nuances that go into negotiating complex issues with a bilateral partner.
All right, many thanks for that report. CNA senior correspondents Leong Wai-Kit in Metro Manila and Tan Si-Hui in Beijing. Singapore will host a new AI forum to help teachers across ASEAN use the tech safely in classrooms. And students will also get to learn and collaborate with their ASEAN counterparts in science and tech programs. Now, these initiatives are part of a broader 5-year plan to prepare students for an AI future while strengthening regional ties. These initiatives were announced at the ASEAN Education Ministers Meeting. The plan also includes adventure camps and summer exchanges for regional students, as well as sharing sessions for educators.
Education develops our people and strengthens these ties. This is important as we navigate shifting geopolitics, economic transformation, and rapid technological change, especially artificial intelligence, or AI. These forces require our education systems to keep evolving and changing.
Education is foundations of ASEAN future competitiveness, cohesion, and resilience. By investing in our learners and educators, we invest in the more connected, innovative, and inclusive ASEAN.
In other news, Japan is reportedly working with partners in Southeast Asia to develop new sea routes as insurance against the next maritime shock as it steps up efforts to mitigate disruptions from the Middle East. A Japanese paper, Yomiuri, citing the foreign ministry, saying that Tokyo will be working with Indonesia and the Philippines to chart their respective straits, with plans to create detailed nautical charts for ships to navigate through these waters. Now, the project is designed to give commercial shipping more confidence in alternative passages other than through the heavily used Strait of Malacca. Tokyo will provide up to $12 million for the initiative through its official development help scheme for Indonesia, the Philippines, and East Timor. The funds will go to hydrographic surveys, seabed investigations, and the installation of navigational aids. Well, time now for a short break, but coming up next on East Asia Tonight, investors on watch for possible official intervention to support the yen as Japan's finance minister signals readiness to step in. Plus, Samsung is reportedly eyeing a major investment in French AI startup Mistral in a funding round that could value the company at $20 billion. Hello again. Glad you're still with us on East Asia Tonight. It is now time for your business news. And Roland, let's talk about Cathay Pacific. Well, apparently things are looking up for the flag carrier Cathay Pacific.
Indeed, yes. Management is actually excited by the fact that strong demand is helping the carrier weather higher jet fuel costs due to the US-Israel war on Iran. Now, Cathay Pacific says it expects near record profit for its first half of this year, boosted by strong passenger and cargo demand. The Hong Kong carrier forecasting net profit up $830 million, which would be the second highest in its history and more than double the same period last year. About a fifth of it came from Cathay reducing its stake in Air China, earning around $180 million from it. Conflict in the Middle East provided a silver lining for Cathay, which carried 17.5% more passengers in the first half of this year as compared to the year before. This as passengers rerouted away from the Middle East, choosing other airlines. The Hong Kong carrier's hedge against fuel prices also helped to dampen costs, which made up almost a third of operating expenses last year. Cathay's forecast provided some lift to the carrier stock, closing almost 3% higher today. Japan's finance minister is warning of bold action in the currency market if needed, as the yen slid to a 40-year low. Now, Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshimasa Hayashi issued a similar warning, signaling that Tokyo's growing alarm over the weakening currency, which is driving up import costs and inflation. The yen fell past 163 to the US dollar overnight amid a broad dollar rally triggered by the latest attacks in the Middle East, which has pushed oil prices higher and fueled concerns over US inflation. It is currently changing hands at 163.05 to the dollar, which is roughly flat. The weaker yen helped Japan's exports rise for a 10th straight month in June. The data showed steady double-digit growth for most of the year except in February, when US tariffs hit shipments and the Chinese New Year holidays slowed demand from the mainland. June's figures were also supported by strong AI-driven demand for data centers despite supply disruptions linked to the Middle East conflict. Markets are watching for clues on whether Tokyo will intervene in the currency market. A Nomura analyst says another factor behind the yen's fall below 163 is Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's economic blueprint, which failed to ease concerns over Japan's fiscal policy and possible government interference in monetary policy. Analysts say official warnings have done little to reverse the yen's decline, which continues to be driven by a stronger US dollar and the Bank of Japan's still low interest rates. The risk of intervention keeping investors on edge. Japan's Nikkei index closing the day down 0.2% at 66,115 points. Chip equipment makers also losing ground. South Korean chip giants giving up sharp gains as caution before key U.S. technology and chip earnings, which highlights the market's dependence on heavyweight chip makers. The benchmark Kospi index settled 0.7% higher after rising more than 6% in earlier trade, largely helped by a 9% surge in SK Hynix, which closed in the red. Samsung Electronics also finished marginally higher. South Korea's Samsung is reportedly in talks to invest up to $1.14 billion in French AI startup Mistral. The French Financial Times says the investment could form part of a fundraising round valuing Mistral at around $23 billion. Now, Samsung and Mistral have yet to comment on the matter. The potential deal comes as Mistral expands its partnership with major tech firms. Microsoft recently agreed to spend billions of dollars on the startup computing infrastructure in Europe and to distribute its AI technology through Microsoft's platform. Mistral supplies technology to the French military and has positioned itself as a European alternative to US tech companies. The shares of Taiwan's Wistron, that's a supplier of NVIDIA, surged on news that the electronics maker launched a $700 million plant in Texas. The 324,000 square foot facility will produce several of NVIDIA's advanced chips, including the next generation Vera Rubin superchip. NVIDIA says the U.S. plant is part of its $500 billion investment plan announced last year. Production is set to begin later this year. Wistron joins the ranks of Taiwanese companies expanding in the U.S. as the Trump administration pushes to reshore manufacturing. Nike is tightening control over online sales in China as it tries to revive growth in its third biggest market. Now, from January, major retail partners will stop selling Nike products online. Instead, the sportswear giant will sell through official branded stores on platforms including Tmall, JD.com, and Douyin. Nike says the change will offer shoppers a more consistent and premium experience. The move comes as its Greater China sales fell 17% in the last quarter amid growing competition from domestic brands. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said that Washington will investigate whether Chinese AI systems were trained using the outputs of American models. Now, the scrutiny comes as lower-cost Chinese platforms emerge as a credible challenge to their Silicon Valley rivals. Mr. Bessent told media that they are finding watermarks of U.S. models on many Chinese ones, and he described it as unacceptable. The matter is likely to be brought up at a meeting on AI between the U.S. and China, reportedly set to take place in September. The recent release in China of Moonshot AI's K3 fueled expectations that chatbots from the country are catching up with those from the U.S. It's also sparked questions over the massive AI spending in the U.S. and whether it'll pay off. But American companies have alleged Chinese models were unfairly trained using their offerings. Now, they claim these platforms use distillation, which is when a smaller model is trained using a larger one. Now, in February, OpenAI warned U.S. lawmakers that Chinese rival DeepSeek used distillation on its chatbot. Anthropic has accused DeepSeek, Moonshot AI, and Minimax of the same. But China is pushing back against those allegations. Now, on Saturday, Assistant Chinese Foreign Minister Liu Bin said that some countries hype up distillation, which is misguided and counterproductive. And before I go, a quick check on oil prices. Both contracts rising to near 6-week highs amid escalating hostilities between the U.S. and Iran. Brent crude futures currently trading up 3.8% in late Asian trade, $94.52 a barrel. U.S. market, the West Texas Intermediate, also up by 4.34%. And that'll do it for business. Otelli.
Thanks so very much for that, Roland. All right, we are going to go for a break now, but coming up next on East Asia Tonight, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth ups the estimated cost of the war on Iran. Plus, families of Indian seafarers killed near the Strait of Hormuz demand answers and accountability. Well, this is East Asia Tonight, and here are the headlines we're following. A possible Trump-Xi summit, fragile trade ties, and the potential for cooperation. The focus of talks between top U.S. and Chinese diplomats on the sidelines of the ASEAN gathering in the Philippines. Japan reportedly seeking alternative shipping routes through safer waters. Local media say Tokyo will work with Southeast Asian partners to chart 5 strategic sea lanes. And more disruption to energy cargoes. 3 tankers carrying Saudi crude oil turn back, heeding a warning from Houthi rebels against transit in the Red Sea. Well, that retreat in the Red Sea triggering fresh concerns over global energy supplies from the widening conflict in the Middle East. The 3 tankers carrying Saudi crude bound for China and India decided to turn back and head for the Suez Canal rather than brave the Yemeni coast after a warning from Houthi rebels. The Iran-backed militia earlier this week declared a naval blockade on Saudi Arabia, opening a new front in the war. Now, this is a serious blow to Riyadh's energy exports that has been reliant on its Red Sea port of Yanbu as the main alternative route since Iran's blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. Well, war risk insurance costs have reportedly risen in the past 24 hours, with risk assessments for Saudi ports being re-evaluated. Now, the number of vessels crossing through the Strait of Hormuz have also dropped, according to latest shipping data. This all comes as the U.S. continues its strikes on Iran, marking the 11th consecutive night of attacks. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says that allowing Iran control of the critical waterway would set a dangerous precedent with repercussions beyond the Middle East. Now we've got Blake Sifton for CNA joining us live from Tel Aviv. So Blake, walk us through this. With Yemen's Houthi rebels now also blocking the Red Sea route, what is the impact on global energy supplies?
Good evening, Otelli. The Houthis' declared naval blockade of Saudi Arabia is threatening a major alternative route for Saudi oil. During the war with Iran, it's understood that Saudi Arabia has diverted millions of barrels of oil per day away from the Strait of Hormuz across their east-west pipeline, which crosses Saudi Arabia and reaches the Red Sea. Now, yesterday, the Houthis warned international shipping companies not to load or unload cargo in Saudi ports, or else they said that they would be targeted. Now, so far, the Houthis have not actually attacked any ships, but just the threat of them being targeted was enough to cause those 3 oil tankers you mentioned to take a very lengthy detour. They are headed to China and India, and now rather than going through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait off the coast of Yemen to the Arabian Sea, they are now headed through the Suez Canal to the Mediterranean, and now will have to go all the way around Africa. Now, during the war in Gaza, the Houthis regularly attacked ships off the Bab el-Mandeb Strait that they accused of having links to Israel, and shipping in the Red Sea hasn't even fully recovered despite those attacks ending in October when the war in Gaza ended with a ceasefire. Now, the Houthis have largely stayed out of the war with Iran, but it's understood that they maintain the ability to target ships off their coast using anti-ship missiles, drones, as well as small attack craft. President Trump has said that the U.S. will take care of the Houthis if they attempt to blockade the Red Sea. But it is understood that if they act on this threat to attack ships carrying Saudi oil, it could very well have a major impact on global energy supplies.
And Blake, what we're hearing as well is that both U.S. and Iran, they're saying that diplomatic efforts to end the war are continuing. But how likely will that move forward?
Well, that's right. It's understood that diplomatic efforts are continuing through mediators, but it's not believed that Iran and the U.S. Are speaking directly. Now, mediators are said to have put forth a proposal for a 10-day ceasefire, during which time Iran and the United States would work to revive the memorandum of understanding they reached last month. It's also believed that Qatari mediators are trying to clarify language around the Strait of Hormuz in that memorandum of understanding, because it's thought that different interpretations of the language on how operations would work in the Strait of Hormuz during the ceasefire is what's caused it to essentially break down. Now, despite those diplomatic efforts, we need to remember that the military situation in the region continues to escalate. Last night, we saw an 11th consecutive night of U.S. strikes on Iran, as well as Iranian attacks on U.S. targets in Bahrain, in Kuwait, as well as Jordan. And of course, President Trump is also threatening to escalate the situation even further, talking about hitting the so-called Pickaxe Mountain nuclear site. Now, that site was not attacked by the United States or Israel during this current war with Iran or in the 12-day war in June of last year, but Israeli intelligence has accused Iran of moving thousands of centrifuges to that site. Now, we've heard from Iran's military command. They say that any U.S. strikes on that site would be viewed as an expansion of war in the region, and in response, Iran would strike all the interests of America, its allies, and supporters.
Well, thanks for that update on the conflict. Blake Sifton for CNA from Tel Aviv. Now, with two vital shipping lanes cut off, Middle East energy exports to Asia must now take a much longer detour. Oil loaded at Saudi Arabia's Red Sea port of Yanbu normally sails south through the Bab al-Mandab Strait before crossing the Indian Ocean, but that route is now closed by Iran-aligned Houthi rebels in Yemen. And some refiners are considering a route through the Suez Canal. Tankers would sail through the Red Sea towards Egypt, avoiding the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, although heavier vessels would face an extra step. A fully loaded, very large crude carrier exceeds the limit the Suez Canal can handle. So some of its cargo would have to travel through Egypt's Sumet pipeline. Now, the tanker would pick it up again on the Mediterranean side, before continuing its journey around Africa's Cape of Good Hope and back across the Indian Ocean to Asia. Now, analysts estimate that the journey will take up to 4 weeks longer than the usual route, adding to freight charges and fuel costs. Now, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says that the Iran war has cost more than $37 billion so far. Well, this is up from a previous estimate of nearly $29 billion in mid-May. Mr. Hegseth was testifying before a Senate hearing where he defended a request for another $7 billion in supplemental funding from the Pentagon.
So I acknowledge they still have capabilities, no doubt, but the amount of damage that we've done to them over the course of these series of operations has put them in the worst place they've ever.
Mr. Hegseth's testimony comes amid an escalation of the war, with the U.S. forces saying that they have ended an 11th straight night of strikes on Iran, bombing targets in the south and west of the country. Now, Tehran, meanwhile, targeted U.S. sites in Bahrain, Kuwait, and Jordan. The latest phase of fighting has proved to be among the deadliest of the conflict for U.S. forces. Now, the death toll for U.S. troops is now at 17. And from Washington, Kate Fisher has more on what the Pentagon's request for more funds implies about the U.S. timeline and goals in this war.
This is not about to be over soon, despite the fact the Trump administration said this whole thing would take a matter of weeks. We're now months into it and multiple billions of dollars into it as well, with the the Department of War asking for more money to carry on. And this is in addition to the already $1.5 trillion budget that they have already got. So it is huge amounts of money. Democrats have been criticizing this, saying that this is not about needing more money. This is about poor planning, and suggesting that Donald Trump has repeatedly suggested that this war is going to be over soon, and it just simply hasn't happened. And there are criticisms that this could be turning into what's called a forever war, which is something that both Secretary Hegseth and and President Trump insisted it would not be. Pete Hegseth said himself that this money is needed to make up for critical shortfalls and to ensure that the military can have a strategic victory, which I think shows you that still the goal here is military victory, despite the fact that throughout this Donald Trump has flip-flopped between that and trying to find a diplomatic way to end things.
Families of Indian seafarers who have been killed amid the rising tensions in the Strait of Hormuz are calling for investigations into their deaths. Well, they're also demanding greater protection for those working on vessels along one of the world's busiest shipping routes. Well, India is one of the world's largest suppliers of seafarers, with more than 300,000 sailors working across global shipping fleets, according to government data. Relatives of Indian seafarers killed near the Strait of Hormuz spoke of their grief and the uncertainty left behind. Some have lost their sole breadwinners, while others are mourning their children and loved ones. They want greater transparency and accountability.
Indians are being killed every day almost now. From last 1 week to every day, something or the other Indians are dying. And the government is just condemning. What difference will it make condemning? What difference does it make to US, Iran, Russia, Ukraine? It won't make any difference to them. It's just we are condemning. What condemning? Your people are dying. It's war, according to me. It is act of war. If Indian is being killed without any reason, it's act of war.
The Forward Seamen's Union of India says that more than 15,000 Indian seafarers remain stranded in the Strait of Hormuz, and it has raised concerns for their safety with the International Labour Organization and the United Nations. Coming up next on East Asia Tonight, parts of Japan endure another brutally hot day as temperatures are forecast to reach 40 degrees Celsius or higher. The AI race is no longer just about building smarter models, but about making them cheaper. And as more businesses embrace the technology, companies are under pressure to make AI more affordable without sacrificing performance. We've got Ira Spitzer filing this report from San Francisco.
At this San Francisco hackathon, developers use AI agents to write code, build apps, and complete increasingly complex tasks.
Doing biocomputation of like proteins and creating scientific pipelines to help people basically discover medicines programmatically with AI agents.
Software engineer Michael Kirsanov uses coding models developed by OpenAI and Anthropic. Like many AI companies, they offer subscription plans. But once users exceed those limits, they pay by the token, the basic unit used to process AI requests. The costs can quickly add up.
I think in the last month, I probably have gone through around $4,000 worth of tokens.
The more complex the task, the more computing power it requires.
Coding agents like OpenAI's Codex and Anthropic's Claude Code have demonstrated remarkable capabilities, but all that computing comes at a cost. That's why many developers here have started relying on open source models, especially for routine tasks.
Analysts say pressure is also coming from lower-cost models such as China's DeepSeek and Alibaba's Qwen. Carl Vincent Ka is building a health tech startup and has stopped relying on expensive cloud-based models for much of his work. Instead, he runs open-source AI models directly on a powerful laptop, avoiding the per-token fees charged by cloud AI providers.
So I can say goodbye to Claude, OpenAI, and get similar performance. It's not quite up there yet, but at least for the tasks that I do, especially for the research that I do, it's good enough.
Analysts say developers like Ka reflect a broader shift across the AI industry.
We're out of that token maxing phase anymore. Now we're in token optimizing, which is the typical approach of the enterprise to see if there's an ROI for a technology investment.
Many analysts say AI companies may have to accept lower margins in exchange for more customers.
As those tokens become cheaper, the use of AI cost of use of AI goes down. So guess what? People will use it more.
And that's why the next phase of the AI race isn't just about building smarter models. It's about making them cheaper to capture a much bigger market. For CNA, Ira Spitzer in San Francisco.
Well, safety also remains front and center amid recent reports of AI models going rogue during testing. Well, you can find that full report on our website, cna.asia, as well as on our mobile app. Japan is sweltering under life-threatening heat as parts of the country face a second straight day of what's known as kokushobi, which means brutally hot day. It's a new term introduced this year for days when temperatures hit 40 degrees Celsius or higher, reflecting the growing frequency of extreme heat. Now, heat stroke alerts have been issued across the country. In Tokyo, more than 200 people were taken to hospital with suspected heat stroke yesterday. Well, that marks the highest daily number of cases reached this year. Officials say a high-pressure system is driving temperatures to dangerous levels, and authorities are urging residents to keep cool, hydrate regularly, and avoid prolonged time outdoors. Tens of thousands of dementia sufferers in Japan go missing every year. But one fatal railway accident forced the country to rethink who should keep them safe. Well, that was in 2007 when a 91-year-old man wandered onto the tracks and was killed after being hit by a train. The railway company then sued his family, a lawsuit that was dismissed. This week on Talking Point, host Muna Makhabib meets the man's son.
母はうたた寝をしている。で、妻は席を外して別のその段ボールの処理の仕事をしていた。その瞬間に父はいなくなった。これ父のシャツなんですけど、これをですね、父の衣服につけていました。で、これは父がもし帰れなくなったとしても、事故が起こった身分を証明するものは何も持ってないんですよね。で、現場で捜査に当たった警察の警部さんがこれを見て、この方は認知症を患っておられる方だということがすぐに分かったということで、この一番下の妻の携帯電話番号に電話をしてきました。
What would you and your family do to prevent him from wandering?
物理的に父を拘束するということは無意味だということを勉強しました。私がこの南京錠でフェンスに鍵をかけて開かないようにしたら胸まであるところを乗り越えようとする。ですので閉じ込められる行動を制約するということは認知症が進むだけなんですね。
And all it takes is a split second for someone with dementia to vanish, as Muna knows only too well.
As a caregiver to my mother, so my mother has dementia. Oh, sorry, now I'm going to cry. My old cousin, my mother, she's also lived with dementia for 9 years now. And I guess more and more, when I speak to people who's lost their parents through these sorts of experience, it makes me concerned about, what could happen to her and how I would be able to help her better so that she won't go off wandering, she won't get confused. So I think what I wanted to understand from your point of view is how can we better help the person with dementia to make sure that they are safe?
ですので父を介護している時は腹の立つこともあったんです。この野郎ってもう同じことを何回も10回も20回も説明しなくちゃいけない。その父を突然失った後考えるとしまったなってやっぱり日常のことをですねもうちょっと自分が勉強しておけばよかった。もう少し父にですね優しくしてやったらよかったな。どうしてしたら防げたのかなというふうにも思うんですけど。
And to ease the burden on caregivers, Japan certifies dementia-friendly businesses and trains staff to spot early signs among their customers. Here is how a company famous for its probiotic drink is helping.
You have this orange band here. How come I don't have it?
認知症サポーターとしての研修を受けたからこういうのをつけております。高齢の方が物忘れをしたり認知症になったりすることの少し私たちの知識を得るための研修なんですよ。
Can you show me what you do today?
こちらこそよろしくお願いします。はい、では行きましょうか。
Mariko is part of a network of over 31,000 women across Japan who deliver Yakult to customers' homes, many of whom live alone. But her weekly visits aren't just to drop off these drinks.
おはようございます。違いますよね。認知症と物忘れとはね、結構物忘れもだんだんちょっと増えてきたんですよ。
認知症になりそうって言ったらね、自分でどういう努力したらいいかなと思って、私今草花のね、名前とか、どっから来たとか、そういうのしてるんですよ。
お料理も作られてるんでしょ、ちゃんと。
お母さん炊いて、冷やして。
また教えてくださいね。よいしょ。ではありがとうございました。また1週間後に参ります。
In Kobe, all Yakult ladies must clock 90 minutes of dementia training, earning them this orange band. That training helps Mariko and her peers recognize signs of dementia through everyday conversations.
And that was an excerpt from this week's Talking Point, Part 2 of When Seniors with Dementia Go Missing. And you can catch Talking Point tomorrow, Thursday, 23rd of July at 9:30 p.m. on MediaCorp's Channel 5, online on CNA Video On Demand, MeWatch, or CNA Insider's YouTube channel. Now, a youth collective in Japan is aiming to give traditional businesses a new lease of life with trendy beats, starting with turning a Tokyo bathhouse into a pop-up club. Well, here in a century-old Japanese public bath, a DJ works the decks while customers relax in the tub right behind him. The group Login.jp takes the beat across various spots in the country, bringing the set from tofu shops to rice fields. 21-year-old co-founder Jun Kim says that the project, called the Shoten, or small shop, aims to reconnect young people with local communities and encourage appreciation for everyday spaces. Now, one clip filmed in a neighborhood stationery shop has been viewed nearly 2.5 million times. The owner says it brought in new customers who came to browse the shop and hear his stories. Mr. Kim says the Shoten project may not directly boost sales, but it is bringing people together to appreciate these local businesses. And that pretty much wraps up Wednesday's edition of East Asia Tonight. Don't forget your headlines anytime at cna.asia. And you can look us up on all our socials, including Facebook and YouTube. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.